credits as my guide, I was struck by the way David Crosby, Stephen Stills, Graham Nash, and Neil Young each sang in a distinctive voice and had a songwriting style his own, yet still managed to create a unified sound together. The lyrics had an unguarded directness I wasn't accustomed to hearing in much rock at the time. Getting into Bob Dylan's head on his records was a challenge, as was discerning his intention. With these people, their feelings of confusion, romantic anguish, or anger were entirely out in the open. You never forget how eerily chill and singular a song like Guinevere sounded, or how Young's voice on Helpless was so fragile, high, and spooky. I read what I could on them at the time, mostly in magazines like Rolling Stone and its scrappier music competitors, Cream, Circus, and Hit Parader. I learned that the group featured members of Buffalo Springfield, the Byrds, and the Hollies. Some writers called them a supergroup, whatever that was. They were ubiquitous and mythological, and I also learned they were already defunct. I spent the next few years buying everything else of theirs I could find. It was like entering the world of an extended musical family, but with siblings who were all from different clans. How could the person who made a rattled and jittery record like Young's Time Fades Away be in the same band with the guy who made Nash's far more crafted and precise Songs for Beginners? How could both harmonize with a guy like Stills, whose force of nature voice and musicianship almost swallowed up albums like Stephen Stills? And how could any of them bond with the indolently blissed-out hippie at the center of Crosby's If I Could Only Remember My Name? This was a band? Well, it was, and it wasn't, as many of us came to realize. I'd read in 1974 that they were playing together again. To my eternal regret, I didn't go to the concert. My parents frowned on me venturing to nearby Jersey City, warning it was an awful place. Once that tour was over, we all awaited a new album from them, but it never came. Instead, they went back to their separate worlds. I first saw them on stage in 1977, when Crosby, Stills, and Nash, no Young, reformed for an album and tour. Even in the nosebleed seats where my friend Chris and I sat, it was pretty thrilling to behold them in person and watch Stills run around the parameters of the stage by way of a wireless guitar. How did he do that, we thought? But a year later, they'd shattered again, and so it went. They would reform as a trio or a quartet. Young generally seemed to keep as much distance as possible, resurrect their songs and vocal interplay, make more money than most of us would in a lifetime, then burst into pieces and go about their own business before starting up the cycle again. One of their former employees told me they'd broken up 8 times during his tenure with them. Over the years that followed, this experience was at once fascinating, exasperating, and disheartening. The records they made separately or in pairs alternated between tremendous and enervated, and as the decades wore on, they increasingly looked and sounded ravaged by their lifestyles. As anyone who recalls the full quartet's deflating reunion at 1985's Live Aid will attest, the sight wasn't always pretty. Their relationships surely weren't as exquisite as their music, which seemed to sum up something about all of them. How could a group so identified with harmony fall into such regular discord and disarray? And just as important, why have so many of us remained riveted by this saga, despite the merry-go-round of glories, letdowns, and buzzkills? Naturally, the music they made remains the fundamental reason. 50 years on, their finest moments are permanently interwoven with the fabric of rock history. Stills' chilly voice and Young's 2-note guitar on For What It's Worth, the rush of voices and guitars at the start of Sweet Judy Blue Eyes.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.